a little bit about myself. I'm actually an Agile coach and Scrum Master, and I've been doing this stuff for too many decades. But I can tell I'm among geeks. However, you're all imposters because my initials are GKE. So my monogram is GEK. So I'm the only real geek in the room.
Nice.
You guys are nerds.
Nice.
I'm going to start with a little bit of a review, and all of you are I can tell you're very much into this. I'm into it too, but I'm on my way out, and you'll understand when I get to the end. In the 1970s, we had lots of little computer accidents, and they were really kind of funny. One programmer modified his company's payroll program and found that his next paycheck was $0. Didn't bother to test. Another one was a magazine subscription program that delivered every copy of the magazine to the same address. This was back in the 70s. Then we got to around 1980, 81, and things got a little more serious. We had fly-by-wire aircraft that were flying into the sides of mountains. Now, they were unmanned, but it was getting expensive at this point. Then came the mid-1980s, and we started killing people with our software. Anybody heard of the Therac 25?
I saw that story this week, and I don't know why the universe chose to bring that to my attention right before you came and presented to us.
The Therac 25 has been in my wheelhouse for a long time. It was a medical device developed in England that had two types of radiation, X radiation and electron beams. Now, we don't have to go into details about which one you use which, but they're different. And the power ratings are entirely different. The Therac 25 killed 3 people because of a user interface error. Say what? User interface, if you change the setting, it defaulted back to electron beams, even if it was on X radiation, and it burned holes through 3 people. Actually, 6 of them, 3 of them died. That was 1985, so we're looking at 33 years ago. Things have gotten better, right?
Great. now we write software to intentionally kill. That was unintentional.
Good point. Good point. Things changed. They really did change, and it started getting really serious because the Internet of Things is going to be the end of the world. You know that, right?
Skynet.
What's that?
It's like Skynet.
Skynet? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not coordinated enough to do that.
It will be. It will be. I got interested in this because of testing, and back in the ancient days when I was working with Charles Babbage on his initial difference machine. Some of you know that, okay? Some of you are too young to even know who Charles Babbage is.
That's a deep reference. I like
That's
that.
a deep reference, yeah. I actually dated Ada Lovelace. That was Lord Byron's sister. I got involved in this because testing became a very important issue back in the 80s and 90s. And it was very important to understand for me, how did I know that this stuff worked? And then I started writing driver managers for front-end processors. And the very first client was a hospital, and my front-end processor was going to handle on a high-speed trunk patient and medical records. Wow. Change one bit or one byte, and an arrow of retinol is changed to, through Hamming codes, changed to methanol, and the patient dies. So I became very concerned about that. I started looking into software safety. And the Therac 25 was relatively recent history at that point. And I continued that interest, but in 1977, 78, somewhere around there, I started consulting on my own in my own company. I've had the fortune to work in a lot of different areas. So this is where the interactive portion comes in, guys. I want to share a few experiences. Well, let's just say within the last 2 decades, I worked on a top secret project that was spying on telephone calls. Anybody worked on any TSSCI systems? Security? Okay, you know what I'm talking about there. This thing's still classified. I'm just glad that we did it instead of the Russians, because fortunately they were too busy hacking with Donald Trump, right? Little joke there. And we were spying on hundreds of telephone calls a minute. It was really ancient. Today we're spying on millions per minute. And your smartphones, you know what a security risk they are. So we all have them, right? So what are the security risks? You guys, you know it. You're up to date on the news. What's the issue on sensors?
Always listening.
They're always listening.
No way to
turn them off. You don't have
disconnect
any
them.
permissions. That's right. And what's one of the major sensors in your smartphone?
GPS?
That's in dumb phones too.
Microphone?
The accelerometer.
Mm.
There were 5 papers published in the last 6 years on how to track you through your accelerometer, even in a subway. So the issue now has become not just software safety, but for those of us who are responsible for software safety and for corporate money and all. How do we deal with the fact that we've lost our privacy? And I'm not making this a political discussion. We've lost our privacy. But what are we doing on social media? We're giving up our anonymity. It doesn't matter that if somebody wants to, and we know Apple and Google and they're all spying on us, right? We know that. The tracks that were maintained in the iPhone after it came out initially, and they were discovered that they were doing location tracking on you. That has gone away. Any more than the NSA when they said, "Oh, we're not listening to the phone calls. We're just listening to the control flow information." They were lying through their teeth. I was working on the project, a project related to that. So the issue becomes not that someone walked into this convenience store at 4:14 in the afternoon in a suburb of Orange, New Jersey, but that it was you, Corey. That's the difference between privacy and anonymity. And we're losing our anonymity. Now, what does that mean? And what are some of the areas where we've done that related to software? Anybody heard of Ancestry DNA? 23andMe? The Golden State Killer? They're all related. The Golden State Killer was 82 years old when he was finally apprehended last year, or was it early this year? And he was tracked down through what?
Relatives DNA.
Relatives DNA. Not his DNA, relatives DNA. They got his DNA from packages that he left out in the trash and everything, but they didn't test his DNA in this site. They went to the relatives DNA. And actually, Ancestry and 23andMe, they have to be subpoenaed. And the other one was quite a different situation, wasn't it? But only by that much. Only by that much. Anything that you throw into the trash is legal for DNA. You have no say over whether somebody tests your trash. Once it's in the trash, it's public domain. So as we look at our software and we look at the Internet of Things, how many of you have a car that's less than 4 years old? We're tracking it. In 2016, I did an engagement with, I'll just say a major American automobile manufacturer. I was working on their connected vehicle strategy from Detroit. And they're tracking everything. They're tracking everything. Pretty soon, they're going to be putting probably particle sensors in there to figure out if you exude the right pheromones. They can do that. We can do that. Now, what was interesting is that the connected vehicle strategy is very convenient. You can start your car remotely. That modem transmits 24/7, 365. And for this particular manufacturer, their protocol was abominable. In fact, Ed Ames, who's a security analyst for the automotive industry, he said the automotive industry is probably the worst industry that we have for security. That they are nowhere near the aviation industry or even Microsoft with respect to security concerns.
Has anyone ever gone to a car security village at a security conference? Besides Augusta had one last year that literally had all of the electronic components on the car plus the central computer. And they gave you access to a terminal where you were hooked into the car. And the whole point of the exercise was to be able to like go do and do things like roll the windows down and buzz the memory in the device to make different things happen in the car. And people would stumble on things like one bit off from rolling the windows down was like killing the ignition or the brakes.
It's abominable.
And like,
It really
yeah,
is.
it's all like arbitrary, and there's zero authentication between any device in the car.
Yeah, and they're tied together through this modem because the telemetry continually goes back. And what's interesting is that at this automobile manufacturer, I was stunned. Well, actually, I wasn't really stunned. I just kind of chuckled a little bit. The lawyers said the first thing they will do is that when they get their new next brand vehicle is they will turn off the telemetry because they don't want to be liable. They don't want any legal liability. All that information is subpoenable. So if you're speeding or if you're accelerating and there's something and you get in an accident, that telemetry will be subpoenaed. So all the lawyers at this major U.S. manufacturer said that's the first thing we'll turn off. So what does that mean for us? They're not telling us to turn it off. They're telling us to leave it on. So the issue of software safety really comes down to, are we safe? It has nothing to do with software. It has everything to do with us.
So who does the lawyer contact to turn off this?
How does one go about this? Any process.
I'm not at liberty to explain.
No, it's more than telemetry too, because it's recording it. It's one of those things, right?
That depends on the design. This was actually the 5th attempt of this manufacturer to get this thing right.
I know, I've read where, they've had these lawsuits and the car company says, oh, it's proprietary, you can't see it, but if you try to read it, it's a DRM violation, we will put you in jail if you try to read it.
That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. I'm not a lawyer, but the argument is always around negligence and negligence. There's no defense against negligence. The point is, we are giving away our privacy. We are voluntarily giving away our anonymity. Does the word Facebook mean anything to you? Twitter?
Avid user every day.
Avid user, yeah. I use Google once a month because if you don't use Google, you will be flagged.
Just go searching, you mean?
If you try to go off the grid, it will be noticed.
That's
If you use PGP encryption, you will be flagged. Obviously, you're a terrorist. So the point here is the societal and personal issue that we as professionals in this field have an obligation, ethical, moral, and legal, to our profession and to our fellow citizens about how are we going to prevent abuses? Because with power comes the ability to abuse. And when you centralize power, whether it's digital or political or legal, you're going to have these potentials. So the question always comes up, are we doing the best job that we can? That's just an open question. That's one reason that I am off the grid as much as possible. Now, my previous phone was a really, really dumb phone. I mean, it was a moron. It was so dumb. It didn't even have GPS. Does anybody know how to buy a non-GPS phone in the United States now? Josh?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
You can still buy it.
Yeah. But all of these have GPS by federal law.
911 emergency is required.
And one emergency required, so that is a benefit that allows a back door for tracking. Now you can always triangulate on these things. Previously I could only be triangulated. Now I can be GPS, and I can't get past. Centralization. Yeah. So the Internet of Things, when everything is put together, said Skynet? You guys ever said Skynet? Yeah. Maybe not. But it is an issue to be considered. And it's one that has bothered me for a long time. My first degree was in philosophy. So these types of questions always come up. But the issue of safety, just to give you some idea, and you guys know about this, one analyst decided to see what he could do to hack doctors' offices and hospitals. And it took him about 2 hours. He said it was pathetically easy. And he had access to patient records, financial records, and everything because they had no security.
Did he have to drive to the hospital? with
No,
him?
he was outside. He was
Okay.
outside.
I'm surprised it took that long.
And back to your comment. In June 2015, the 2014 Jeep Cherokee was hacked with the journalist inside and driving 70 miles an hour, and they took over 10 miles away through the wireless connection and turned on the wipers, turned on the radio, turned it on, and brought it to a stop
In traffic.
in traffic.
We actually discussed that at ColaSec that month.
Yeah.
Because that was a terrifying article.
Right. So the issue is, as software accretes and grabs everything, what do we as professionals need to do? What do you
Turn
guys think?
everything off.
Turn everything off?
Turn everything off.
That's actually an option to a certain point. But even then, you have to pull the battery
Yes.
to make sure it's really off. So I've talked about the DNA issue, I've talked about the phone issue, the sensors, and I've talked about the satellite project I worked on, medical records. Oh yeah, and then there's the smart TV and Amazon. Hey Alexa. Baby monitors that people are listening in and you can hear them.
So the Hey Alexa thing, I met somebody who develops AI, and we were talking about that, and I mentioned, well, if it's listening for Hey Alexa, obviously it's listening for everything that's not Hey Alexa.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm assuming writing that to a database and then stripping out the customer information and then selling it. She's like, oh yeah, we buy all that stuff, but we don't strip out any customer information as much as you think. So, you know, that's an even scarier part. You know, you assume they're stripping it. I mean,
It doesn't matter. Yeah, last year, I was going to be a physician and I subscribed to multiple journals, Nature and Science and such. And Nature last year printed an article that they could determine who somebody was even from the anonymized data.
It's scary how few data points they need to do that.
It was 6.
Yeah.
It was 6 data points.
I thought they were
They may be down to 3 now, but it was 6 at that point.
6
Yeah.
degrees.
Even though they strip everything out, they can through the big data comparisons, they can get you with 6 or 8.
When the last time that blanking on her name,
Dr. Marcus.
Dr. Marcus was here, she talked about the fact that you can take a supposedly anonymized data set and pick out individuals real fast.
Yeah.
There's a handful that don't get picked out, but it's like they're the extreme minority.
Then you could probably figure them out because they're so extreme.
Right, like, well, these 6 people we can never identify. And, hey, look, it's the same 6 people.
It's one of them.
You were talking about the Alexa thing. There was a lawsuit in in the last 5 or 6 months where Alexa sent a message with a recording of a couple was having a conversation about someone, and it sent them a message with the recording of their discussion about someone. Like,
Brother
one of
called
his
up and said,
employees.
Tom, we're sitting here listening to what you and your wife are talking about.
Yeah, it was
Like-
one of his employees it was sent to.
Was it an
It was
employee?
somebody in his
Yeah,
address
but
book.
like they were having a conversation, a private conversation between husband and wife about somebody that not everything was kind. Because, you know, sometimes you can get bitch about people. And-
Really?
Right?
But they must have
And-
said the right combination of
And
words
right, Alexa interpreted it as record this conversation and ship it off to the person I'm talking about. And yeah, it didn't end well.
So we all probably see this, like when you Christmas shop, you know, and if you're doing it from the same app router and device, everybody gets the ads for the same stuff in your house, you know. So the same AI developer I was talking about that, I was like, you guys really need to fix that. You know, that's a problem. She was like, oh, we call that mistress management, because what happens is the guy will go to a jewelry store, buy a pair of earrings for his girlfriend, you know. His wife will get emails for ads saying, here, buy this necklace that goes with the earrings you got, you know, and they're like, and it starts all that problem. So they do actually think about that, you know, and how to manage
Yeah,
that
when
stuff.
my brother-in-law went and got a Amazon Dot or Echo, whatever the small one is, put it in their kitchen, and they were talking about needing to go buy shoes, and all of the ads they saw on the internet that day are for shoes. Like, it's creepy. What the hell is happening? This is creepy.
What is this?
It's the same with Facebook and your phone.
I'm sure. Yeah. That's why I don't have that. It's just it's just them I don't want having the data, right? Someone's got it.
Well, this is
Well, wasn't it a few,
devices.
like 5 or 6 years ago, or more maybe, when the search engine stuff started happening? Wasn't it like AOL or someone decided that, oh, we'll just anonymize the search results and put them out there? And then someone went out real quick and it's like, oh yeah, you can anonymize them,
Yeah, like
Yeah.
but we can still figure
all
out
you did
who
was
it is.
strip off the originating IP address. You can still find it, buddy.
Yeah, it's like someone just looked up their home address or something and.
So does technology have its own momentum? Is it personal, is it stoppable, or is it inevitable?
Well, I was going to say catastrophic, an event that happens, you know. Somebody released a database of every Donald Trump conversation through his Alexa, you know, for it to stop,
say so.
you know.
I would argue that it's
Say what?
unstoppable at this point.
It wasn't true. It's fake news.
You can't put this genie back in the bottle. But somebody has figured out how to do this and has also figured out that it's insanely profitable. Somebody's gonna keep doing it for profit. Damn the moral consequences.
It's
Because
not one somebody, it's already, you've
I-
already said.
that's
all
the thing,
corporations
right?
that they're doing
it's
it.
crowdsourced immorality.
If
Let's
everyone has
go.
enough
Let's all make
space to
money.
store data.
And that's exactly the point that the guy who hacked into the medical network said, that this is the business focus for cyber criminals. Because it's a business for them.
Yeah.
So it's still a cat and mouse game. But what do we do? And you guys say, well, job security.
Well, I mean, you know, back in the day, in the 90s, cellular had a terrible problem with fraud. It was real easy to copy the things in a phone. Just some markets, they were losing 40% total. New York, Miami, total losers of markets. And so they said, you know, what's motivating people to do this? They found out most of the traffic of the anonymized phones was criminals. So they said, well, you got to get a business model that supplies phones to criminals so that they don't want to hack the phones. And they did that. That's why you can buy throwaway phones now. And they also made the SIM stronger.
That solved one set of problems and introduced another one,
Yeah,
which
well-
is normal. That's always the case. I guess my concern, and the point that I would have made if I had my deck here to present to you, we can recognize the history, but it's the future that really I think is the most fascinating part of this. Where will it go in 5 years? Where will it be in 10 years? And is there something that we as professionals can do to make sure that these abuses do not occur? Because if there's technology, there are always countermeasures. Then we tighten up the technology and we have more countermeasures. At some point, does the system just break? I don't know. The young people in the room, you're going to have to deal with this a lot longer than I am because I'm quite happy to be totally off the grid.
Any sort of major change, though, you're going to need buy-in from that business side. There's got to be, the public cares enough to say, yes, we really do want to pay for this privacy, this security, and that's not on the radar at this point. So it's like, I've worked on products where, hey, boss, it's going to take another 2 months to fix this up, to make this better, to make this more secure. Well, is anyone going to care about it? Probably not. Okay, don't bother. Throw it out.
There are powerful economic drivers
Yeah.
against that argument, actually.
Yeah.
To why bother making it more secure?
Right.
People don't pay extra for it.
Nope, they don't.
Like,
It's money you're burning to spend time to make this thing better in a way that no one cares about. Well, no one statistically cares about.
So if we go back to the software issue, what can we do to make our software better? Because the software eventually will either enable this change or perhaps enable improvement. One of the big issues is not just testing, because systems, the problem isn't lines of code that are bad. The problem is systems are designed poorly. And it's usually a system failure. And Nancy Levison from the University of Berkeley, California, Berkeley, she's one of the leading experts. Anybody know Levison's work? If you're into software safety, you should read her. She makes a very, very interesting and prescient comment about it's not the line of code that's the problem, it's the overall system design, the failure of the system to be designed well. And so how do we do that? I know that with my clients, I have never, back to the gentleman's point back here, in the 2 decades that I've been consulting, actually a little more than that, I've never had anybody ask me the question in my entire career, is this software safe? So is it shippable? Does it do what it's supposed to do? They've never once asked me, is this software safe? Because they don't care. But when they get sued, they do. As NCR I worked for as an employee many years ago, and they got their pants sued off because of failure in one of their systems, mid-range systems. So are there things that we can do? There are a number of techniques. One of the simplest is what's called fault tree analysis. Is anybody familiar with fault tree analysis? You probably have seen it, but may not know it by that name. You basically start with the error and work your way backwards. And you say, this could happen. This is the worst thing that could happen. What could cause it? You work your way backward and you get this huge fan out. And you get basically a logic tree. And then you start at the bottom and you try to reproduce and make sure that you block every one of those paths leading to each of those, the root cause as well as the sub-causes there. FTA has its own limitations. The fact that most of you are not familiar with FTA really, really bothers me because this is a security group. It's the same as when I was teaching state machine diagramming. We're using UML to a company, one of the best known companies that does uninterruptible power supplies. They didn't know anything about state machines. And that really disturbed me. I won't tell you who the company was. But
There's like
FTA.
3 of them.
Are there that many?
I won't tell you which of the 2. But there's an extension to that called STAMP that was developed by Nancy Levison, actually. And it's a semantic. The S stands for semantic representation. And it takes fault tree analysis and allows you to build entire semantic networks to describe your software and how it could go badly. So if you're interested, look up Levison, Levesson, and STAMP, and read some of those things. It may be of interest to you, and it may provide some information for some of the work that you're doing. I don't really have an ending to this talk. What I wanted to do is just share some ideas, some things that have bothered me, to have a little bit of dialogue, which we've had. I really am interested in what you guys, in your professional areas, feel that we can do to make the world safer through software rather than more dangerous and risky. So any other comments?
My goal to work is always to be the thorn in everyone's side, to make
That's a career limiting.
That's okay. There's enough engineering jobs out there. I'll find enough. I'm okay. I've got time. But I'm always authoritative on everyone's side because I'm going, if there's a right way and an okay way, like you said, we can shift. I try my damnedest to do it the right way at the time we are doing it anyway. If there's two ways to do it, the right way and the okay way, I try to force everyone to go the right way. At the given time with our given resources, try to do it right instead of just doing it because we've been doing it for the same way for 20 years. Let's change it and go, hey, this is the way everyone else in the industry is doing it. The leaders of technology are saying, hey, okay, we need to secure it this way. We need to encrypt it this way. Let's do that. If it's possible, let's do it now.
It's still career limiting.
It is.
That's great. So I appreciate you bearing with me in this very informal fashion. It wasn't what I planned, but today is just been one of those days. We're still a week behind our deployment. Hopefully we can get it done this week. So I work.
Alex is not here with us tonight because of said deployment. So.
Okay.
Well, maybe not that deployment, but a deployment.
At that place, yeah.
I was gonna ask, in the 80s, we actually have drones.
They were drones. They were just really big.
Like it's a 747 with a mechanical dude.
Yeah,
They
big
had
noise.
World War II. I mean, it's crazy. They had a big TV thing that they drove up.
B2 was a drone.
To a certain extent, yeah.
Guided. Most of our current planes are drones. They're all just autopilot, just button flights and stuff. Big airline.
Yeah, and the whole surveillance state too, it's becoming more and more relevant. We've got sensors about this thing, perch on wires, balls.
You can go online with my iPhone chargers, your USB port that has little cameras in it and stuff like that. It's really cheap too, you can put them all over this room.
This guy's shown me some scary kit from the private investigator.
Yeah, things you can throw in like somebody's car, you want to track a girlfriend
Purchasing,
or
like-
something, or you can put GPS devices in the car and track it from your. It's crazy.
And eventually, once you go up to 23andMe and you store your DNA because you want to know what your ethnic ancestry is, which is all crap anyway. It's based on probabilities and has nothing to do with actual nucleotide bases, right? The insurance companies will get it. And they're not liable for the information that they get. They just turn you down. So this is the issue of the anonymity and privacy. And we're just really butting up against that.
That's to me the most sticky question that we talked about tonight is how do you fight the economic incentive that someone has to actively undermine and violate privacy and anonymity of everybody. Insurance companies have a vested interest in getting your 23andMe data so they can figure out which diseases you're prone to so they can jack up your rates or deny you coverage altogether.
But that's only the latest version of that. I was working with a
Right.
major U.S. insurance company in the heartland of America. This was 20 plus years ago. And at that when I was, you all heard about redlining on insurance rates, right? Well, the federal government stepped in, rightfully so. So the insurance companies, and the guys told me straight up, well, what we do to rate you is now we talk to all your neighbors. If you're a jerk, we'll raise your rate. We're getting the information of whether we want them to. But now we're making it easier. And we're giving them more data.
Right, and instead of being a sort of karmic thing, if you're an asshole to all of your neighbors, insurance rate go up. Now it's just straight up, no.
If you've
got a family history of diabetes, we're just not going to cover you.
Well, if you have a family member who has diabetes or was put in jail, your rates go up because they're assuming a certain actuarial model that
Odds are good.
families say yeah, and they will behave in similar ways, predictably. It's very, very complex. It's very complex.
I always get the question from a neighbor or something like that because of what I do. You know, if somebody hacks my phone or whatever, what are they going to do? What are they going to get? So a lot of people is that they just don't really care. You know, my refrigerator gets hacked. You know, I don't care. You know, so I always struggle with what to tell them. A lot of people do. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, but they don't see the overall risk. They understand that. Okay, they're collecting all this information about me. What do I care?
How if the fridge gets hacked, it slows down the
Netflix. but that's their.
I love to argue with you.
Way
You're
of
not
thinking.
wrong.
We're in this industry. We're afraid of it. A lot of people are just like,
I have nothing to hide. Why should I care?
Yeah.
It's a very, very common, it's actually a very rational response. The point
You
is.
have $75 in your bank account. You have 75 things to
Okay. We've all seen Minority Report. I say that movie. You know, how easily you can be misidentified and all that. You know, but that's still their way of thinking, and that's why, like you say, it's inevitable. It's going to keep going because most people don't care.
It is very rational in that they could be misidentified, but the odds of that happening are incredibly low.
The no-fly list, you guys have heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Garbage.
What puts you on the no-fly list?
A whim.
Whatever they want.
Yeah, it's
Whatever somebody interprets any data about you, what they want.
it's one of those. I love the TSA guidelines on what you can bring on a flight. You can actually freeze. You can't take a bottle of water, right? Because that's a liquid. It might explode. You can freeze the bottle of water, and a bottle of ice you can take on the plane. But if the TSA agent in line with you doesn't know that particular line, or is just in the mood to be a jackass, he can deny you because the final line in the TSA guidelines is it's all up to the discretion of the agent you're dealing with.
Well, just don't tell them it's water. Tell them it's hydrogen oxide.
Right. Please don't do that. You might get cancer.
It's for my health.
Unless you want to get real friendly.
Doctor prescribed.
You're getting real intimate with your TSA agent.
Where else you got the hydrogen oxide hydrogen?
Stuff's expensive.
It sometimes seems discouraging, but your point about the arguments that I've done. I think most of us, well, except for the criminals, most of us probably don't have a lot to hide, but all of us have something to hide.
But regarding that, I think I was pretty optimistic before coming to this.
Wow, I'm glad I didn't show you the slides.
But I feel like overall the security industry is getting better. There's actual real valued bug bounty programs. There's actual attention. There's headlines that are hitting every day.
Regulation.
Well, yeah, but that's at the enterprise level to protect the data you already have or bought, so
Yes.
your competitors don't get it.
But
But
from the
your
privacy
personal
standpoint-
data, no one cares about that security.
And that's the dichotomy that I was alluding to.
Yeah.
We are spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year to protect our companies from external attack.
Yeah.
But we're spending billions of consumer dollars a year giving away our privacy
And
and our anonymity.
to
What's
that
wrong
point,
with this picture?
the solution that ISPs came up with, like cell phone providers came up with, to protecting your cell phone data from being hacked or your location data from being hacked, is just to sell it. You can just buy it wholesale for like $5 a pop. Go nuts. Why bother spending the money to hack it when you can just pay for it outright?
What annoys
It's
me
totally
the most
legal.
Recently, what annoys me the most, I mean, I do run a anonymizing VPN at home that will push all my data through. But Netflix, you can't push it through that anymore. Amazon videos don't work. It's like slowly, you can't go to your bank to check your account in one of those because the bank won't accept the traffic.
You need a new VPN service.
Or several.
Yeah, but it's like, it's like one of those things where you try to make steps. It's like, I just want like the provider, like where I'm going to sort of know. I don't want my ISP to be in the middle to an extra person selling the data.
As a society,
But now the provider's like, no, we don't accept anonymizing.
So
as a
Even if it's
society,
like
we're collectively
anonymized.
freezing you out for the option of having it.
Exactly. It's one of those things where.
But that
Like, to your
take,
point
take
about-
that further to voting. The
Sure.
states or the federal government force you into digital voting. You feel safe with that? Nobody in this room feels safe
Have
with
you
that.
seen anything about
That's a
that?
huge push for that.
Has anyone seen anything about the Voting Rights Act that just been proposed? Or not Voting Rights Act, what do they call it? It's a voter security law that's just been proposed. I don't know how much traction it's actually had in Congress, but it's worth a flip through if you're interested in such things. And it actually does mandate in federal law that any electronic voting system actually incorporate paper ballots. So you would vote electronically, but it would print a paper ballot, and that's what you'd actually return. And the paper ballot is standardized.
You just have to be recorded on paper.
Oh,
Illinois used those, and so when you voted, they had a little paper tape, and you could lift the cover up, and you could see, well, I voted for Joe Blow and Joe
Right.
Blow and so on. But you would see that, and so someone could go back and audit the voting that happened in that precinct because they
Right.
got all those tapes.
And this
Because right now,
this has
we're
been
doing,
an answer for a decade.
like in this state, there's no,
They want people to vote from like your phone. They want it to be that.
Yes.
well, you can do that.
Outside.
But
In
I was
Washington
gonna
State,
say,
Oregon,
as long as the right set of people can vote from their phone. Yes, that's absolutely the case.
Biometric, pass all your things, let
Yeah,
us
what do I
see
do?
your
I have a
retina, all
phone,
that,
right?
and vote.
But these are the issues that all of us, as we continue to grow and business open, we're gonna have to deal with.
Regulation and compliance. Most companies won't even do it if it's not mandated by the government. They're not, they don't have to, they're not doing this.
How many,
What's
let me ask you a question. This is just a confidence issue. How many of you actually have deposited money into an ATM slot? Okay. Still trusting. Fairly trusting. Fairly trusting. I work for NCR. We developed ATMs. I never put money into it. I take it out, but I never put it
my
in.
bank won't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Now you have to use your cell phone.
I mean, you're not talking night deposit box, right?
No, I'm talking
Like-
ATM.
Yeah, no.
ATM deposit.
That
I can't.
that always seems sketchy.
I
to me.
still-
Part of this is generational.
I mean, when you put your bills in there, they scan them and they tell you, you have this amount of money.
No, you put your cash in an envelope, you write on the outside how much is in there. and
Now
trust
you
somebody.
see-
We're talking real old school
Yeah.
stuff here.
No, that always
I
felt
don't
sketchy
know,
to me.
I'm-
you know what?
I didn't know why, but I just always kind of had a.
Counts it.
Plus 1 million.
It's a generational thing, and so we've got a generation of younger people, obviously, who are growing up, and you
ATM
feel,
right behind the gas
feel
station.
you can trust
That's
this,
from
and
the
that's
bank.
fine.
I'm like, okay.
My
Follow the
concern
bank,
is,
and just
are
pull
we
20 out the gas.
producing a justification?
Slide the card
So with
into
that,
it.
I'll finish. Thanks for the interaction, guys.
ATM.
I really enjoyed it. I've learned some
Right.
things. Thanks. Back to you.
I don't want it.
You don't want it?
I'm here to have a good time and I'm leaving depressed.
I
I'm actually on
The Columbia Mesh Network, are we starting that now?
I think we should.
If you're interested in a mesh network, by the way, there's a tiny cabal of poor bastards like him and me and the brewmaster at Conquest that really do want to build a wireless mesh network in Columbia in case, the world ends. We can still be hacked remotely and tracked. Right, sure.
But at least we won't be giving money to
Everybody do raffles?
I gotta start.
Nobody will take us, maybe I'll come look back.
We gotta carry all ten
Oh,
books.
wow.
All right, somebody go take a book. How much time do we have? Like 10 minutes? So,
Thanks, guys.
We're doing it off.
CO, when y'all wanna come up and do this?
Corey, I've got to drive back. Thanks so much. Oh, you gonna do a thing?
Yeah, I'll do my thing. So we're gonna do a little bonus presentation here. David's got a rundown on deploying PK out.
This is so people can buy raffle tickets.
If you say
They're all the books.
if you don't buy raffle tickets, I won't stop
I
talking.
can't offer you more pizza, but there are more crackers and some big things we can mention.
my account, or I shared it to. I shared Cola documents. Cola documents is email.
Oh, damn. I'll have to hunt him down. Was he driving a lot of
Use that tab since that's instead of an incognito. I don't know if you log out of the incognito sign.
I would.
Yeah.
You say that unless people park in front of your driveway, you don't let it.
Not now. Do not save.
Heidi Grover.
Right, you don't have auto save turned on.
I mean, we have the Starbucks in Chapin now, which doesn't have the Starbucks logo on it. The new coffee shop across the street.
I know this time.
So it looks like the Wired Goat pulled it. The Wired Goat, they had a cool thing going in Chapin, expanded to downtown Columbia, overextended, I think, and didn't do the research they should have done. They were in a terrible spot.
If I didn't know the
Zero
was out there, I would have gone back.
And ended up collapsing out of that space, and not long after they collapsed out of that space, they collapsed out of the main space. Now there's a new place called Daily Grind. Yeah, so they've been on the cusp of opening for like a month now. It's the slowest open.
Of course, it's gone now.
One day I just saw
Alright, so how do
it was like next to us.
Right.
It's just gonna blast in the screen. Grab your tab, drag it up.
Go.
Who was this? No, isn't it?
Are we doing it two first?
Tufa. Yeah, since he had a shorter 30-minute presentation, we're going to do a quick fire talk in addition. We normally go until like 8 or 8:30.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Witchcraft, all right, yes.
So, I have a completely different presentation than that. That was very enlightening and also kind of depressing.
But also kind of depressing.
Kind of depressing, a lot of enlightening.
I mean, I would
A little dash of,
I would put it a little closer to 50-50 because
yeah,
it's extraordinarily sobering discussion.
it was quite sobering. So maybe I should have gone first. Anyway, I've been working on PKI the last couple months. So I thought I'd share just a quick little walkthrough of what we're doing, how we're doing it. First of all, our goal is to issue smart cards to all of our users so that we can get to that point. This is my sample. With PKI, in your agency, in your company, you can issue certificates for all your internal websites. So if you have a web server in the DMZ or a web server in your internal LAN, give it a certificate so that your users trust it. They're not hitting in Chrome, advanced, and just bypass anyway, because ignore the certificates. As bad user interaction, bad user training. Unfortunately, building a PKI is a fairly decent workload to build it. So it's easier just to deploy some web servers with some self-signed certificates that nobody trusts and move on with your world. So if you really want to, if you're a big enough organization, if you got enough money and fellow engineers, you can actually publish your own external certificates. So if you wanted to publish, company.com, you can get certified by DigiCert or whoever, and it costs a lot of money. You have to get audited a lot, so I wouldn't recommend that. But if it's something you're interested in, something you want to do, you could do that if you follow the right guidelines and you pass their audits and everything. It's like 50 grand to get registered, or at least send the application if you're interested. VPN authentication, if you want to help your user experience, you're not typing credentials all the time, pass that certificate across, validate your CRL, and you're good to go. Document signing, code signing, all that good stuff. Encrypt everything, all your internal protocols. I don't trust the LAN. People used to and still do, but they shouldn't ever. Encrypt email, Wi-Fi, all that good stuff. You can also do SSL inspection. So if you're on a corporate network, if you're in the network team and everyone is hitting encrypted websites because everything on the internet is encrypted and you can't see it because it's encrypted, you can, if you build your PKI appropriately, issue a certificate to your Palo Alto, whatever you have. Now you can basically man in the middle of all of your internet traffic, and now you can see it. There's some potential moral questions about if you want, if I'm an employee and I want to go log into my personal bank account, well, I'm my work computer. Now I'm, my personal bank information is now subject to my network team inspecting and sniffing that traffic. Maybe some questions there, but it is possible to do.
You can get around that technically, at least with the guys.
Yeah. So with Palo Alto, and I'm not a networking guy, but you can classify. Okay, I don't want to inspect bank traffic categorically, but I do want to inspect Gmail and Drive, public storage, stuff like that. So you can categorically, at least from what I've been told, you can choose to do things. Like I said, let's have some actual trust, not just assumed trust. Like, sure, the server's fine. I wouldn't ever trust blob.contoso.com. I hate Contoso, but it's the only screenshot I can find. And like I said, everything on the internet is encrypted. Everything on the intranet should be encrypted. The fact that we still have software running that's unencrypted internal is horrifying to me. I won't tell you where I work, but it's really disastrous because obviously we all know breaking in through the outside, onion is a lot harder to do than it is to social engineer and just work your way from the inside. So to prove my point, the NSA showed us how easy that was with Google. Google didn't encrypt anything internally, their internal pipes, and so they got hacked. And I don't know who made this smiley face, but this did it for me. Yeah. Does anybody remember that when Google, basically the NSA would wiretap to Google because between Google's data centers, they didn't encrypt their traffic, so they just assumed they trusted between the data centers. Your connection from your endpoint to Google, was encrypted, but everything else was unencrypted. So NSA was watching all of that, probably still is, but just in a different way. So what are we doing? If you want to build a PKI, you need at least one old laptop if you want, a virtual machine or something running on your LAN, and then a couple of web servers in your DMZ. Your old laptop is going to run Server 2016, so that you can actually build a root certificate authority that's going to create your private key. You can store that on what's called a HSM, a hardware security module, or if you can dump it on a USB drive, $10 from your favorite Amazon Alexa. It costs about 15 grand if you want to purchase a redundant pair of hardware security modules that are USB connected. So you plug them straight into your laptop. They're basically a black box. So it stores your private key. There's a little password protected multi-role device that lets you access that thing safely, reissue keys, all that good stuff. Or, like I said, just get a couple of redundant USB drives, store it on there, you're good to go. You got to have a virtual machine on your network that all your clients are going to talk to day in and day out. Obviously, your laptop that you built is not going to be on the domain. You never connect with Wi-Fi, internet, anything. The only connection in and out of it should be a USB drive that never leaves your possession. So your virtual machine is going to talk to all your domain machines to tell them, here's your trusted certificate. It will kind of act on behalf of your root certificate authority. You can also, if you've got enough money, spend $100,000 or more to have network hardware security modules. Those will actually store all of the certificates that you issue to all your machines and users and things. It will store those private keys safely and securely. So it's an additional layer to encrypt store all those private keys securely without having them just sitting around or available. And you've got to have a couple servers available in the DMZ so you can publish your CRL. So that, especially if you're going to do like VPN authentication, stuff like that, your clients have to be able to check that CRL and see if that certificate's been revoked. And then some software if you're going to get the hardware security models to manage all of that.
Out of curiosity, do you have any idea how they're actually securing things in a hardware security module in that network system? Is it just an encrypted disk type situation, or what are they doing?
I don't really know. Of course, they're going to call that protected information. They're not going to tell me.
Right.
That's not true. So you can buy HSMs that meet the different FIPS criteria. So that's actually posted.
Well, true, yeah. So they're being FIPS compliant, but
to what level does FIPS dictate
It tells
the actual?
you if you open up the case, this will happen. This is the type of hardware you will use. These are the preventative measures. This will be the way you access the equipment.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of it, from what I've seen, I'm still in the early stages of this, is more like policy based. So like there's security rules, like you have to have several tokens available. Like you have to, one security officer puts in their PIN. The next is the partition owner, they put in their PIN. And the next one is the database owner, whatever the different roles are. You got to have multiple humans, or one human if they're all assigned the same thing. But for good practices, we separate all those roles. So this is your basic layout, your basic design. Your offline root is your old laptop. Once you build it, configure it, throw that thing in a safe somewhere. Only touch it every couple months. Your subordinate CA is your VM on the LAN. That's the one talking to all your machines day in, day out, issuing certificates on behalf of their offline root. Your domain controller, obviously communicate with that, your clients. And then your IS servers and your DMZ so that you can publish that CRL. Like I said, a hardware security module, I just ripped this off of Wikipedia because I'm not well versed on all of that. But like I said, it's from what I've been told and from the way I've tried to understand, it's basically just a black box for your private keys. So pretty much told you all that. Build your offline root on your CA, export your private key and your CRLs onto your USB drive, dump them onto your issuing CA, build out your CRL, get your couple of web servers running, and then configure everything. I haven't gotten too much farther than that, so give you a couple of links if you're interested. I'll post this on the Slack channel, and I hopefully do follow up fire talks about issuing smart cards, getting all your systems integrated so that they do trust your certificate authority, and therefore all your machines are, certificates are now trusted, your users are trusted, and you can start encrypting everything. So,
what mechanism are you using to push out the offline root CA and sub CA cert?
Just group policy. Yeah. You push out your root and your subordinate so that all your, just like if you check your certificate store on your machine, you'll have all the, DigiCert, Starfield, and all the different, root CAs that your machine trusts. So this will just join that group of trusted root authorities. So any certificate you publish will now be trusted by your machine. That's all I got. More on that to come. That's officially it. Thank you, everybody.
I used to work in the biggest yeah, it's 20 people, and you kind of go in and you all under openings, and your key is how they build like seal things in the below. It's piecing in PCIs.
That's mainly why we're doing it. Like we don't want. No, we're not.
That's why I love compliance regulation. PCI did something for security. Like PCI mandates that there's no blink child, which you need.
Yeah, it's done what it's supposed to do.
But it's that's how you dealing with all that. All right, man. Well, appreciate it. You guys are doing a great job. First time.
We'll see.
Welcome. Yeah, I have already joined this, sir.
I have it installed. So
ColaSec.org. Go to ColaSec.
Yeah,
there's a link on there you can try.
more than likely. So you guys are
Yeah, it's not something proactive. It's probably some daily publisher on some personal page. That's something ColaSec. So, but yeah, the Slack channel is pretty active.